This is Chuck Schaefer of Customer TV, and I am joined by Tim Brayman, Vice President of Revigy. Tim, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Chuck. Happy to be here.
Tim, you are an expert in sales planning and execution systems. Help me understand, how do these types of solutions improve sales collaboration and, most importantly, sales effectiveness?
Great question, Chuck. So, in looking at sales planning and execution systems, what we're really trying to accomplish is to better equip the sales team, right? Enable them to have more powerful and successful conversations and sales cycles with the customer. And so what these tools are specifically designed to do is to compress the amount of time that it takes for the sales reps to find and the sales teams to find the information that they need to have those context-rich, buyer persona specific conversations with the customer themselves that the customer perceives as high in value.
CSO Insights reports that sales win rates are at an all-time low, and the number of deals going to no decision is at an all-time high. How does a sales planning and execution system respond to this challenge?
Okay, that's a great question. So over the last, call it 5 years or so, win rates by that world-great competitor, no decision, have gone up about 20%. So that's a big problem for the teams. Now, the typical reason that this is happening is that we didn't reach the key decision makers and provide a value proposition that the customer perceived as valuable in their world related to their business strategy and their business risks. So the job of tools like ours is to provide those specific messages, tools, capabilities, and assets to the team so that we can clearly demonstrate to the customer domain expertise, knowledge of their problem, and how we're going to empower them to solve that problem and achieve their business goal.
If there's one thing that we have learned in the CRM and Salesforce automation industry, it's that user adoption remains a top challenge, particularly with salespeople. How do you design a sales execution and planning system so that salespeople actually want to use it?
Yeah, that always remains a challenge, right? So how do you equip the salespeople and the sales teams to make them wildly successful, right? They are trained, they're seasoned professionals, they really believe that they know how to win the deal with the customer. So what we want to try and accomplish for these people is be proactive. They've got very little time. You referenced CSO Insights. If you look at the amount of time that the sales teams actually spend selling, less than 25% of their time. They're hugely compressed and challenged with time. So you have to be proactive and provide tools that are highly explicit and needed at the point in time that the team needs them, right? So you don't provide them a portal with 50,000 assets. They're in a sales cycle with a financial services institution talking to the CFO. What's the one best asset that I need to deliver to them at this point in time so that it compresses time? They don't have to go hunting for it. That's one of the ways, is you really have to provide value to the sales team, just like they're supposed to provide value to the customer. Now, the other side of this is you can never forget the change management exercise. Any kind of software implementation, especially around salespeople, right, is all about the change management. You know, in Six Sigma, they have a concept of a predictable journey. What does my life look like in 6 months? So the sales team wants to know, okay, how is this going to affect me? And then I want continuous messages from my management and my executives that, yeah, they said we're going to use this technology and it's going to help us. Well, they need to operationalize this technology into their everyday business planning cycles, right? And help the sales teams see the value, communicate the value to the team, and continuously integrate it into their operational system.
And continuing with user adoption, it would seem as though sales planning and execution systems need to be tightly integrated into CRM and SFA applications, almost so that the salesperson doesn't recognize that this is a niche solution with a very focused purpose. How do you best integrate a sales planning and execution system into a CRM or SFA application?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It can't be a separate place that the sales team has to go. It has to be tightly embedded inside the SFA, inside your CRM or Salesforce automation application. It's absolute death to any application of this kind if you have to do duplicate data entry. The sales team simply will not put up with having to enter data in one place and then re-enter it back into the SFA. They have no time, they have no taste nor tolerance for anything like that. So you have to make it one-stop shopping, present where they are operating, right, and then make it a high-value solution to them. So you need to integrate into SFA, but you also need to integrate into all those other assets that they need. You know, you've got the marketing team producing a volume of assets that you want to leverage into the different target markets and buyer personas. You've also got to make sure that you're integrating into your marketing portal as well to bring those assets forward.
Sales playbooks are increasingly seen as a tool to apply scarce sales resources to where they're best utilized. They're also designed to achieve optimal sales processes and consistent sales processes. But help me understand, what's the structure or the types of content you see in the best sales playbooks?
So the best sales playbooks are actually going to do a couple of things, right? They're going to drive consistency in your sales execution, and they're also going to align specifically with the way you want your salespeople to sell, right? And the best practice model there is to line up your sales process with something called a buyer-aligned sales process, where you actually link your sales stages with the steps that the buyer's going through in their sales process, right? The biggest risk that we have in a sales process is that the teams will race through all the steps of the sales process and get to the end, and they've left the buyer behind. We're expecting the purchase order, but the buyer's still early in their evaluation process. So critical to this process is to lay out a sales step and a sales stage tightly aligned with where the customer is, so that we're doing that rich context, intelligent delivery of tools to the team.
Tim, social media has resulted in a change in the sales process, a change in the balance of control from seller to buyer. How does a sales execution and planning system, or maybe with the support of a sales playbook, respond to this change?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'll put a little bit different spin on that and say that I really think that social media and the social tools available have really rapidly accelerated the empowerment of the buyer, right? So 10 years ago, you still had to go to a sales rep to learn everything about the product, but the internet started making more and more information available. 10 years ago, you would still reach out to your network of friends, but you may have picked up the phone to reach out to that network of friends. Social media has accelerated that with snippet-based content, very targeted assets, all being pushed into the buyer so that they're more rapidly aware of what are the critical success factors of a problem. So people can, in less than 1/10 of the time and effort, reach out to their network and get really rich, specific information about a problem that they're trying to solve, so that what they get back, right, is highly relevant information that they value because it comes from their network, people that they subscribe to as being valuable. Right? So that's really accelerated the process and made it easier. And so now they're much, much further down the journey, right? All the metrics from CSO Insights and everybody else shows that we're much, much further down the journey, or the buyer's journey, before they actually contact the sales team. So those sales teams, when they get contacted, they've got to be ready with crisp, on target, on persona messaging.
What's the profile of the sales force that's going to get the maximum value and payback from a sales planning and execution system?
That's a great question. I think there's value in sales playbooks to everyone in terms of driving consistency and more rapidly onboarding people and driving up our forecast accuracy. Those are three things that every sales executive cares about, right? So the complexity of the playbook has to scale to the complexity of the solution that you're providing and the complexity that your customer is trying to solve.
Excellent points, Tim. And with that, I think we're at a good break point to conclude our conversation. This is Chuck Schaefer of Customer TV, and I've been joined by Tim Brayman, Vice President of Revigy. Tim, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it.